All right, well, it's 5:35, so we will go ahead and kick off our virtual community meeting tonight. Thank you, all of you who are able to join us. We'll also have the recording available, and we'll find a way to post it on our website, wellabandonment.org, for this project. My name is Justin Salters. I'm working with the team at California Legacy Well Services on public outreach and education. And the SME, forgot to go ahead and turn my camera on when I was presenting. Anyway, it is appreciation for you all to be here today. We're going to go ahead into just an agenda for the topics we're going to cover tonight during our presentation and today's meeting. An introduction to our team members here who are all working with California Legacy Well Services. Then we'll have an overview of idle and orphan wells, what we're working on. Followed by that, an overview of the hybrid training partnership, which is one of the really unique components about California Legacy Well Services and the work that we all are doing together. Following that, an overview of the well plugging and sealing work that we're undertaking and the planned activities that we have in the Kern Front Oil Field area. And after that, we'll be available to answer any questions or we'll attempt to answer questions about the project that we have. Before I go ahead and ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, we'll go ahead and I just want to cover some ground rules for today's presentation. If you please don't mind using the chat feature to ask your questions as they come up, that way we can make sure that we are responding to them. And if we've got multiple questions or the same ones that come up. Also, if you are attending and you would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature so that we can go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself. We also ask that you try your best to keep questions and comments relevant to the topics that we're discussing. I know there's a lot of questions folks have, especially when we're discussing oil and gas operations or wells. And there's a lot of questions that we're just not necessarily in a position to answer or to do much about. So we'd like to go ahead and do our best to keep tonight's conversation focused. And then lastly, but most importantly, is just to make sure that we're treating all attendees and viewpoints with dignity and respect. We recognize there's a wide diversity of opinions and thoughts and feelings and sentiments. So we're just going to ask everybody to be courteous and respectful to all. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask our team members to introduce themselves. I'll go ahead and I will, to keep us all rolling, if you will, the most orderly, I'll go ahead and call folks out. And if you don't mind unmuting yourself and coming on camera, unless you're Christine, because we don't want to lose you and your low bandwidth. But Alex, if you don't mind coming on.
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. Alex Vigil. We are supporting the California Legacy team with engineering and project management support. We're with Honey Rock Engineers and Advisors, and we are a subsurface consulting group supporting this project.
Thanks, Alex. Christine? While Christine's unmuting, I'll go to Sean.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Sean McNally, and I am the president of Cal Legacy Well Services. I've got about, 15, 16 years in the oil business. Primarily for, 8 or 10 of it was in the production side, and then quickly realized that the future was in cleaning up the environment and moving to different alternative forms of energy and cleaner energy. So we, myself and 3 other partners, started Cal Legacy Well Services a few years ago, and are currently collaborating with you, Justin, and Alex, and a few others who have expertise in different areas to collaborate with the unions, primarily the laborers and the operating engineers, to do this work in the safest and most environmentally friendly way possible.
Thanks, Sean. Christine?
Thank you. I will introduce myself and my team. I'm Christine Baker, many years working for the state in leadership roles and in research. I also have degrees from Cal in education. My team is expert in natural resources and global sustainability. That's Janet Sow. as well as Len Welsh, who has a Master's of Science in Health Science and Environmental Health. So we are supporting the California Legacy Well Services effort, working closely with labor and the management team to train and bring workers onto high road jobs.
Thanks, Christine, and thanks for introducing Janet and Lynn. What we're here today to talk about is these well abandonment and remediation projects that California Legacy Wells is undertaking in Kern County. So we just want to begin by centering the conversation around definitions, because I think it's really important, and we all agree that when we're talking about things that have technical meanings, that we are all using the same definition and we can anchor things to. So for the purpose of our conversation, and in California, an idle well is one that has not been used for 2 years or more, and that also hasn't been properly plugged and abandoned or sealed and closed. Idle wells differ from orphan wells, which are idle wells that they don't have an operator who's capable of abandoning or remediating them. So orphan wells in particular have a special environmental and community health hazards, and they're also at risk of leaking methane, which is the second largest contributor to climate change. Dealing with the state's orphan wells is an extremely high priority to go ahead and help protect community health, and also to go ahead and protect the environment and the climate. When we look at just though, like what is the scale of idle and orphan wells, we actually in the state have approximately 35,000 idle wells across the state. And of those, there are approximately 5,000 wells that have identified as being orphaned, deserted, or potentially deserted wells. So when you think about just the risks associated with those 5,000 plus wells, there's an urgent need to go ahead and do something about it. And that is what California Legacy Well Services is one company that has been awarded grants through the California Workforce Development Board, and in partnership with CalGEM and the Department of Conservation to help take on. So looking at California's idle and orphan wells, before we really transition to the meaty part, if you will, of the presentation about the work activities that are going to be done at the Kern Front area. One of the unique things about California Legacy Well Services is the High Road Training Partnership, or the HRTP, that has been developed in partnership with the laborers Local 220 and the operating engineers Local 12, as well as the Operating Engineers Training Trust. So to go ahead and talk a little bit about the High Road Training Partnership, I'm going to ask Sean to come in and talk about labor and management have come together in this.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So as I had mentioned when I introduced myself, we realized a few years ago that there was an opportunity here to help the state abandon these wells that have been, whether they're the state's responsibility. And labor has not ever really been able to have much of a presence in the oil field on the production side. And it seemed like with the state being willing to kind of jumpstart this effort with grant money, we collaborated with the operating engineers and the laborers, and signed collective bargaining agreements with them so that we could perform this abandonment work on behalf of the state using organized labor, which is really a first in the fields in California. On this scale anyway. There have been other smaller efforts, but on this scale, no one has tried it before. So we collaborated or continue to collaborate with those two unions, and we brought our expertise, and between the four partners at Cal Legacy, we have well over 100 years experience in the oil fields and in the abandonment space in particular. And we brought our expertise and sat down with the unions and figured out, and built a training program using all of our best practices. and identifying the gaps. We call it a gap training. We identifying the gaps between what the operating engineers who operate a lot of similar kind of equipment to the workover rigs that you use when you're working on abandonments and cement rigs and things like that. And then same with the laborers. A lot of the same activities or very similar activities in different forums. And then we brought our experience, having spent, many years in the oil fields, a lot of understanding about hazard awareness, hazard recognition, and where the real dangers are, the real immediate dangers that can cause, death and or I'm at a loss for words, but harm to people if they're not aware of the environment they're in and where the hazards are. So we built this really robust training program, and we're pretty proud of it. We feel like we are, in many ways, it's a state-of-the-art training program, taking everything that the unions have as a core training and then layering our experience on top of that, having spent so many years in the field. And we are reaching out to, so the program is built, there are 4 tracks in the program. We take current operating engineers, people that operate equipment, and then train them on the types of equipment that you use to remediate and abandon these wells. We took laborers, current laborers, by laborers I mean the union, labor union laborers, and train them on, much of it's crossover training, but there are particulars and there are particular hazards in the oil field and around these wells, with pressure and gas leaks and things like that, that they need to be very, very aware of, and train them. And then we built a track for people who have spent their lifetime in the oil and gas production business, who are now coming over and going to be cross-trained into the abandonment business, but they need that core training that the unions have offered and do such a fine job of. And then finally, for members of the community who maybe have never worked in the oil and gas business, but are looking for an opportunity to enhance their value in their careers. And so we built a track for people kind of to start from scratch. And so that's kind of where we're coming from. Then we reached out to the state, and the state has provided us graciously and generously with funds to build this program and then to implement this program. And then to the point of not just training people on how to do it, but actually putting in the people in the field and doing on-the-job training and being able to evaluate their competency level and figure out, kind of what they're competent to do going forward. So
Thanks, Sean.
you bet.
All right, so that is how we are finding workers to go ahead and be part of California Legacy Well Services and out in the field doing the work and the planned activities. So now, Alex, if you don't mind walking through an overview of well abandonment and remediation, or capping and sealing, plugging and abandoning are, and the work that we're going to be doing in the Kern Front Field.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Justin. So our team is tasked with kind of developing the engineering procedures that Sean and the Cal Legacy team is going to be executing out in the field. And so part of that process is understanding, and being able to communicate what are the objectives of the well abandonment process. So you look at it from a very basic fundamental principle. The idea is we have, penetrations into hydrocarbon bearing zones, which can be both liquid hydrocarbons and gas hydrocarbons. And the objective of well abandonment is to reach those targeted zones and be able to isolate them with both cement barriers and mud barriers, sufficient that essentially they can't come to surface or they can't penetrate underground usable waters. So when we talk about well abandonment, the simplistic way that you can think about it is taking underground zones that historically produced oil and gas and laying cement plugs across them to isolate them from being able to move their way up the wellbore to surface or up into usable water sources underground. And we do that in two ways. We ensure that you have isolation both inside the wellbore and then both in the annular space outside of the casing as well. So our engineering processes are designed to do that, and then we'll work with the rig companies to make sure that the training process is essentially repeatable across those different well sets, so that they're getting kind of the fundamental aspects of each well in a very repeatable fashion across the 19 wells, which is actually why this program is really great, because our first pass at a lot of these wells was they're very I don't want to say cookie cutter, but they were very similar in well construction. So it allowed us to design the procedures in a way that was repeatable for the workforce development. Now, once the sorry, Justin, real quick, once the well is completed to surface and cemented to surface, the next process is you typically excavate down. Well, you'll perform a leak test, and then you'll excavate down between 5 and 10 feet below grade, and you'll cut off the wellhead and weld an API plate and then backfill it. So at the end of the day, the surface location looks as if there was never a well there in the first place. Okay, go ahead, Justin.
There we go.
So the project in Kern Front consists of 19 inactive oil wells. Like we had mentioned before, the well construction is fairly consistent across the 19 wells. There's a couple nuances, but for the most part, the training and the engineering procedures can be conducted in a way where the training stays consistent across well sets. The located field is in the Kern Front area, which is we'll show a map here in a second. And we plan to get started here shortly. We've done a lot of the job assessments. We walked through the permitting process with the Department of Conservation, collaborating with their group on geologic picks and isolation markers and approved procedures. And overall, we're planning on getting started ideally sometime in this month, with a targeted completion date running one rig at the end of November, right? Just in time for the Thanksgiving holiday. So here's kind of an overview of the map and the location of where these wells are going to take place. As you can see, this is prime oil field territory. So you have both the Kern Front field to your north, which this field is a part of, and then you have the gigantic Kern River field out to the east there. So this property is very familiar with oil field service companies, rigs, crews moving in and out. But we do know that, for the property itself, we're going to have increased activity that will be moving in through these areas to perform the capping and sealing of these wells.
And Alex, I just want to add on this slide that we sent postcard notices to every resident and every residence and business located within a 1,500-foot radius of the project site area. That included overview of the information that was going to be the activities that were going to be conducted, and also contact information and an invitation to tonight's event.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate that. So a summary of the planned activities, we're going to be running a single rig, a traditional standard workover rig. We don't plan on coil tubing at this point. Well, we know that there are some additional items that we can bolster on in the future training programs. We wanted the first program to be repeatable and consistent. So we plan on a single rig running anywhere between a 3 and 5 person crew. They're going to be working standard operating hours, Monday through Friday. No overnights, and we don't plan on any weekend activities. Like mentioned before, there is 2 access roads where we will see some increased support activities, but we've already engaged with the landowner itself, and they're aware of kind of what's coming, and we're just trying to be good neighbors and while we work in their backyard, essentially. Kind of a summary of the planned activities. We're going to have vacuum trucks moving fluids in and out. So we're going to have cementing operations once the wells are cleaned out to bottom to lay those cement plugs. And then every now and then, like we mentioned, when we have uncemented annuluses or We just are unsure of what the top of cement essentially is. That's the height of the cement in the annular spaces. We'll be performing wireline perforating or cavity shots to ensure that we have cement isolation across those hydrocarbon markers.
Alex, I'm just going to jump in and ask a question. Can you
Sure.
describe annular spaces for folks?
Yeah, so an annular space, essentially, you know, when you drill a well, you have the outer diameter of the bit itself. Now, when you end up running your well construction, the space between the OD of that bit and the OD of the outside of the casing, there's a gap there between the size of the bit and the outside of the casing. So what ends up happening in the well construction process is they pump what they call a primary or secondary job, which places cement across the rock itself and against the casing walls. Now, when cement doesn't reach that top above the hydrocarbons, that's where we'll come in and add additional perforations or shoot charges into the rock itself to be able to squeeze cement in between those annular spots.
Thank you.
So as we identified maybe gaps in the annulus that needed additional cement, we've designed our procedures and our training methods to be able to both seal the inside of the well bores and the outside of the well bores, which is consistent with CalGEM regulations. You know, as we perform these, safety and environmental oversight is a key aspect for us. So we follow all of CalGEM's guidelines and the specified permit conditions, whether that be witnessing a BOP test or tags with both the clean out and plug depths. But, you know, our team is very aware, and we've been working, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of abandonments across the state. And so we'll be making sure that each one of these wells not only meets the highest engineering standards, but also complies with all the safety and environmental guidelines that are in place for your standard operators working across the area. Like we mentioned, the project completion timeline is expected to be November 25th. And yeah, we're excited to get kicked off and get rolling.
All right, thanks, Alex. Well, this time I don't see any questions in the chat. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to use the raise your hand feature. We will go ahead and wait a few minutes. And otherwise, and I'll just come back to go ahead and close this off. But thank you everyone for attending. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you, Sarah, for the comment. All right, well, seeing nobody else, and knowing most of the names on this are from our, many of the names actually here in person or virtually with us synchronously are from the Cal Legacy Wells team. I just want to thank again those of you who joined us for tonight. Educating the public about the work that's being done is incredibly important. So both folks are able to understand hazards, understand work, and know what steps they need to take to protect themselves. We remain available, and we'll be having this video posted to our website, wellabandonment.org, and we'll have this up within 5 business days. So thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.